All right, let's dive into one of the most baffling and honestly chilling unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. We're talking about Lake Anjikuni, where an entire village, men, women, and children just seemed to vanish from the face of the earth.
I mean, really think about that for a second. How does that even happen? There was no note, no trail, absolutely no sign of a struggle, just an empty, eerily silent settlement where a busy community used to be. So, let's go back to where this all began.
So picture this. It's November 1930, deep in the harsh, remote wilderness of Nunavut, Canada. It's cold, it's isolated, and something has gone terribly, unnaturally wrong. A place that should be full of life is now just quiet. And the few clues left behind, they only make the whole thing even weirder.
Okay, so our story really kicks off, like a lot of these strange tales do, with one person stumbling onto a scene they were just not prepared for.
This guy, Joe LaBelle, he was a seasoned fur trapper. He knew this village, knew the people. So as he's walking up, he's expecting to hear the usual sounds. Dogs barking, kids playing, the general buzz of a community. But instead, nothing. Just this profound, heavy, unsettling quiet. And that was the first sign that he'd just walked into a ghost town.
And this is where it gets really strange. This wasn't a village that had packed up and decided to move on. Oh no. This was a village that disappeared in the middle of living. LaBelle goes into the huts and finds meals left unfinished, some stew still cooking over smoldering fires. All their belongings, food, clothes, even toys, were right where you'd expect them to be. And the craziest part? Their rifles, absolutely essential for survival out there, were just left leaning against the walls.
And LaBelle's own words really get to the absolute heart of this mystery. In that kind of environment, a rifle isn't just a tool, it's your life. For an entire community to leave their weapons behind, it wasn't just weird, it was completely unthinkable. It tells you that whatever happened, it happened fast, and it just defied all logic.
So, as you can imagine, LaBelle gets out of there and immediately reports what he found. Pretty soon, the authorities show up, but the official investigation, well, that would only dig up more questions, and each one was stranger than the last.
Now, the sheer scale of this disappearance is a huge part of the legend. You'll hear some accounts claiming over 2,000 people vanished. 2,000! A huge, established community just gone. Now, that number is almost certainly an exaggeration. Most historians think it was closer to 30 people, maybe 200 at the high end. But still, the fact remains, an entire village was empty.
The clues the investigators found they didn't make any sense. There were zero signs of violence. But the ancestral graves in the cemetery, they'd been opened up, and they were empty. There were no footprints in the fresh snow leading away from the village, which suggests nobody just walked out. And maybe the most chilling detail of all, the sled dogs, vital for their way of life, had been left tied up to starve to death, just a few feet away from shelters full of food.
This is it. This is the question that has haunted this mystery for almost 100 years. When you have evidence that seems to completely contradict itself, where do you even start looking for an answer? Well, the search for that answer has led to some truly wild theories. Over the decades, people have come up with all sorts of explanations for the Anjikuni vanishing, and they range from the totally logical to the truly out of this world. So let's take a look at the big ones, and we'll start with the more rational ideas. Let's break these down, right? So, mass migration doesn't make sense. People who are fleeing for their lives don't leave food on the fire and their rifles by the door. What about a natural disaster, like an avalanche? Nope, the investigators looked, there was no geological evidence for it. Foul play? Again, no signs of a struggle anywhere. And a disease outbreak? Okay, but that wouldn't explain why there were no bodies, or why the graves were empty. It's like every single rational door just slams shut. So when logic just completely fails you, well, that's when the imagination takes over. The total lack of a normal explanation forced people to start considering possibilities that really stretch the boundaries of what we think is real. And this is where things get really interesting. You've got two major paranormal theories. The first is alien abduction. This idea got a lot of fuel from reports from other communities nearby that saw strange blue light in the sky around that time. The second theory is rooted deep in local Inuit beliefs. See, LaBelle himself was convinced that a malevolent spirit, a sky god known as Torngarsuk, was responsible. That suggests a supernatural event tied directly to the land and its ancient traditions. So the story of Lake Anjikuni has been passed down for generations now. But as we get further and further away from the actual event, you have to start asking, what part of this story is hard fact, and what part has just become a legend?
I mean, it's a perfect mystery, isn't it? It's got all the right ingredients for a classic horror story. The isolation, the completely inexplicable event, and that chilling silence of the unknown. So it's really no wonder that it's become this cornerstone of modern folklore, basically a campfire tale told on a global scale.
But, and this is a really big but, you have to consider the other side. Skeptics point out that the very first reports of this incident were actually pretty sparse, and that a lot of the most dramatic details, the strange lights, the empty graves, only started showing up in retellings years, sometimes decades later. They suggest the story of Anjikuni might just be a classic case of a reporter exaggerating a story that then just spiraled into this massive urban legend.
So, in the end, where does that leave us? Was Lake Anjikuni the site of a real event that actually defies explanation? Was it a tragedy that's just been mythologized over time? Or is it simply a fantastic story, a piece of folklore that reminds us that the most compelling mysteries are often the ones that refuse to be solved? The truth, it seems, just might have vanished right along with the villagers.